to this week's episode of Smart Money Sundays. As usual, I'm going to be breaking down a few of the things that I'm looking at for the upcoming week. Usually everything is obviously always subject to change, and you could be doing analysis on the weekend and then, price action prints on Monday, and your perspective is completely changed, which is why it's always good to do just some kind of top-down analysis on the weekends. So you're prepared and ready and able to react and adapt to price action. Okay, so I'm going to break down just a few that I'm looking at coming into this week, but also quickly kind of break down an opportunity from last week, Friday, actually NFP, which was a beautiful opportunity, a beautiful setup. Actually provided 1 to 30 plus RR. And first off, on Euro USD, I'm going to revert back to what we mentioned on the series last Sunday. Obviously, those who follow you know that after last week's close, the shooting star, I warned you. I said, guys, watch out for this. I've seen this time and time again, where we had that Maribozu close, shooting star. More than likely what it was enticing people prematurely to go short. The retail crowd, and obviously, as you can see, we had that beautiful bullish rally, essentially filling this entire wick. Okay, so if you took note of that last Sunday, congratulations. EU absolutely mooned all week. Okay, but in terms of Friday's setup, I'll break it down a little bit. And in terms of educational content, we typically reserve that for our educational courses and VIP community. And if you're interested in that, please message us on Telegram at ArielFXTrading or visit our website, www.arielfxtrading.com, and we'd be happy to get you involved in our community. Okay, but obviously with Euro USD, with a predisposition of upside momentum and strength, understanding the fact that Euro USD has been bullish, and we had predetermined levels that we mentioned last Sunday that we believed EU could seek out. So with that predisposition, the fact that we engineered beautiful liquidity here prior to London session, running out those equal lows, okay, printing obviously the low of the day in London session, which we like to see in the rally following through during London session. What we also like to see is after that kind of run on liquidity in the expansionary move, the impulsive move for the remainder of London session, we like to see a consolidation and engineering of more liquidity, which obviously we did here coming into New York session. Okay, obviously the run on liquidity, the mitigation, the continuation. Okay, could have had a little bit over a 3 pip stop. Obviously this thing absolutely mooned on Friday with NFP. Again, news is simply the catalyst to push price in its proper technical direction. Okay, so NFP was merely this catalyst after mitigation for the continuation to the upside. Okay, obviously at its peak, 1 to 35, 1 to 36. A beautiful looking trade. All right, so in terms of the here and now, what I'm looking at on EU is obviously within this time frame, more so 4 hour, you can see that we are creating these lower lows, lower highs. And on the lower time frames, multiple legs within singular legs here on the higher time frame. So this is technically our last point of return, what we like to call last point of return, last point of structure, whereby if we break and close above that level, it would invalidate that trend and essentially shift trend and momentum in the opposite direction. So we are trading into our last point of return here on Euro USD. And given the amount of pressure and the way we closed last week, I wouldn't be surprised if we filled this wick, if we continued and actually broke the structure. I would not be surprised. But again, this is our structure point. So if we do get some type of distribution on a lower time frame at this level, around 1.22 I'm looking at. If we do get distribution, I would happily look for at least intraday, intra-week shorting opportunities. Okay, but again, the pressure is significantly to the upside. The pressure is significantly to the downside on the dollar index. Okay, so I'd be wary of that, but at the same time, I do like I do enjoy trading off of last points of return, right? The last structure point of invalidation. Okay, so EU, we are trading into this level, which obviously ran out a lot of liquidity to the left. All right, so just cue into time and price and look for that lower time frame distribution. If we get that, great. That confirmation for a potential shorting opportunity. Okay, but other than that, in terms of continuations long, okay, if we do indeed break this level, we would then obviously look for the pullback and the continuation to go ahead and seek out the liquidity resting above these highs. Okay, so it's just kind of a sitting on our hands, and that's what a lot of the last couple of weeks have kind of been. It's just sitting on our hands and being patient. The markets have been extremely choppy. A lot of the markets across the board have been in big periods of consolidation. Okay, and there's no point in getting involved in a very choppy and ranging market, seek and destroy. You're just going to end up losing more money in the long term. Okay, so when you're better off being able to identify that kind of market conditions exist and staying on the sidelines until the proper setups and opportunities present themselves, like they did on Friday with NFP. All right, so waiting game here on Euro USD, but you know my outlook on it, and it's kind of the same across the board with the majors. Okay, AUD USD. We'll go down to the 4-hour time frame. Obviously, has engineered a lot of liquidity around this region of price, really around 782, 785, a lot of liquidity. Obviously, prior to this major up close on a higher time frame. Okay, so I can visualize this in a couple different ways. I can visualize this as an engineering of liquidity to the upside, a potential UTAD, a run on all of this liquidity, trading into this up close, okay, for a kind of buy to sell. I can also conceptualize it as a reaccumulation. Okay, and right now, for me, I just don't see enough data for me to make that judgment. Again, that's why I'm sitting in my hands and probably waiting for a day's worth of price action to see what the dollar wants to do. Okay, but if this is indeed a reaccumulation for another extension to the upside, this high could be the target. Obviously, there's a lot of imbalance in here that will get filled up. Okay, so if you can find buying opportunities, absolutely, at least for the short term, up into this imbalance. Okay, and then again, it's a matter of, just like Euro USD, whether or not we distribute and we can get a shorting opportunity to the downside. Okay, whether or not we respect this up close. Okay, so that is AU, and the same obviously kind of goes for NZD USD. Okay, and what kind of gives me a little bit of conviction for the downside on something like AU, potentially EU, but also NU, is the fact that we have some very clean engineered equal lows to the downside that I believe we could seek out ultimately, as we really didn't trade into anything here. We didn't trade into anything here that would validate a significant swing point that would produce a higher high in this market. Okay, so for me, it's kind of, okay, maybe we can look at short-term buying opportunities. If we get an immediate retracement, if we get an immediate retracement into here, maybe we can look at potential buying opportunities, but also can also look at it as a run. Sorry guys. You can also look at it as a run on these highs, and that is disgusting. A run on these highs for a UTAD and a BOS and a continuation to take out this liquidity. Okay, so it's just a matter of what it does now. If we continue straight up, I will be looking for distribution to sell it down. Now, if we trade down now immediately, I will be buying it up into higher time frame levels. Okay, and there is a 1-hour candle I've noted with this purple line here. There is a 1-hour candle. It's somewhat in the middle of the range, but I do like the candle, and I won't be setting a limit, but I will be watching how price reacts in response to this level. Okay, it's 7.340. Okay, but on the daily time frame, you can see we are going to be trading up into this up close candle here. Okay, so it will be very interesting to see what the dollar wants to do, and I hope you're kind of getting the gist of it. We're kind of in a tricky spot right now, if you will, on dollar-based pairs. Okay, GBP USD, another one. I am personally liking this level here for potential distribution. Again, we don't set limits here. We have our POIs, obviously the low within this structure at 4080, and I'm also looking at 4120. These are my POIs. Feel free to mark the same POIs that I have. My POIs are almost always my purple horizontal rays. And so these are my POIs where I will be looking for lower time frame price action. Again, if I'm looking for shorts, I would be looking for obviously distribution on the lower time frame at my higher time frame POI. Okay, because GBP USD has some relative equal lows that I believe ultimately will be sought out, and also this down close here that was never accounted for, was never mitigated at 3600. Okay, so I still think ultimately 3600 is actually a viable destination for GBP USD, but obviously now we have our POIs to the upside. If we retrace immediately, we can look to buy into our POI. If we go right into our POI, obviously look for distribution to sell down. Okay, quite simple. Again, a broader outlook, an overall perspective, creating a plan, okay, having our levels, understanding what the market's doing on a macro perspective, and then zooming in when the proper session comes around, i.e. New York session, for that precision and for that confirmation for distribution or accumulation. Okay, very, very simple. Okay. USD JPY, another one. I think USD JPY has a very strong possibility of trading back up into this region of price here, around 110.40. That was never accounted for, left in balance, relative equal highs. And so where would I look to buy it? Well, within this accumulation here, this is the last high within the structure, lower high that created a higher high. I'm looking for a retest of market structure at 108.15, the accumulation and the continuation up, easy target of 110.30, 110.40. Okay, so that would be very, very nice to see play out. Just a couple more. Euro NZD. This one's looking pretty good. Obviously, it was chopping within the range. This is what I was talking about the last few weeks. We've just been trapped on a lot of these pairs. But as you can see, we ran the range once, ran it twice, and ran the sell side. Okay, so we're now trading back within the range. I personally am looking at continuations down in the interim, in the meanwhile. And I'm looking at specifically this region of price up in here. 6,800, 6,820 would be a good area to look for distribution to sell down into my higher time frame POI, where as you can see, we had our sell to buy. 50% was accounted for here within this reaccumulation schematic, which produced a higher high, engineering all of this liquidity within this range. Okay, so what I think could play out is obviously we've had our impulsive move, expansionary, contractory, retracement, ran the high, ran the low, trade back within the range, engineer more liquidity, run the high again, mitigate, continue down into our overall level here, which ran liquidity to the left, traded into the 50% of this down close volume. Okay, so I'm looking at 50% of this, as you can see the inefficiency as well. Okay, and also kind of an old school trick, but if you pull a fib, you can see that negative 27 lines up relatively nicely with our POI as well. Okay, so I'm looking at short-term sells, I'm looking for accumulation in this region of price for continuation to run out these relative equal highs here. So pretty unique, pretty interesting analysis on Euro NZD. GBP NZD correlates somewhat with that as well. A lot of sell side liquidity that I think will get run out, obviously creating this somewhat retail trend line that I think will get run some form or fashion, potentially a buy to sell. Then we can look to take it down into these lows and into LPOR of our bullish trend here. Okay, at 9050. Okay, so if we can just run the highs, trade into this region of price, 9340, 9350 to 9400. Look for distribution, continuation, run the lows, trade into our LPOR. Okay, so that is GBP NZD, again correlating with Euro NZD as well. I believe that covers everything that I wanted to touch upon for today's episode. Beautiful. Again, so we're just creating a plan. There's no signals, there's no setups right now. In fact, personally, I don't like to even set pendings when I, at night before I go to sleep. I like to have POIs. I like to set the POIs on my chart and wait and watch price action on the lower time frames for confirmation. Okay, so it's Sunday. Let's be patient. Okay, but let's be focused for this week. You have your levels marked off. Again, if you have any other markups you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to message us on Telegram at Ariel FX Trading, or you can visit our website if you're interested in purchasing any of our courses, www.arielfxtrading.com. We'd be happy to get you involved. All right. Have a great week and safe trading.